So I was thinking, like, New Year's Eve, like you said, Tom, we could do a drinking game of how many times we'll pick an episode, a random episode, and how many times Superboy says Lana in his dialogue. We take a drink.
Oh, I tell you what, Mindscape would be a dangerous episode for
Oh God. Lana. Take 3 drinks. Oh man,
that would be fun. If we do that New Year's Eve, like that'd be a great video podcast. Like get people in live as well to watch it, and they can play along. Yeah. Although I don't know how much trouble we get in if we actually had the episode playing. It'd be very difficult for people to sync it up. I'm sure we can figure it out.
Yeah, that's just I don't think we'd make it to 22 minutes, and they're short episodes. They're 22 minutes. I think we'd be done in like 5 minutes, 6 minutes. It's like, oh my God, I just took 10 drinks in the span of 7 minutes. 10 shots in 7 minutes. That's got to be like, oh my God.
Yeah, that'd be a dangerous game.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
it wouldn't even be long enough for a live show. We'd have to do 2 episodes at least.
Oh God, yeah.
By the end of the second one, man.
Yeah, I don't think we'd make it.
The stream would be going all night just because we passed out and forgot to turn it off. It'd be 8 hours you passed out on your keyboard.
Just imagine the comments, like in the comment section. Are they awake? The hell happened? Sam just passed out.
That'd be amazing. We've got to do that. If you're free New Year's Eve, like we've got to do it.
Yeah, I'll let you know. That's so funny. Oh my God. But you want to start today's episode?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Let's start today's episode. So, welcome, Superboy fans, to episode 7 of the Superboy Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Sam Rizzo.
I'm Tom Gallagher.
And on today's show, we are going to do an overview of season 2 of the series. We're going to talk about all 26 episodes, and we're going to break them down into threes, and we'll talk about them, we're not going to do a deep dive into them. We're going to pick our favorite episodes from season 2. We'll talk a little bit generically about each episode, and then we'll
you know the routine. We did this for season 1 already, so it's a similar thing. Except I think in season 1 we broke them into 4s or 5s. This time we're doing 3s.
Yeah, we kind of went a little bit past the limit. I think we lost count towards the end, which was funny. I'm like, I don't know how to count, but but in season 2, there's 26 episodes. We're gonna go through each one, pick our favorites out of the block of 3 that we break them down into. So let's start with episode 1 of season 2, and let's give a little bit of context after season 1. So going into season 2. Producer Elias Salkin did the unthinkable. When it comes to TV shows, he recast about 2/3 of the cast. So he kind of cleaned house, so to speak. Some of the actors that were left in the wake of season 1, or just let go, were Jim Calvert, TJ White.
Big shame. I missed him.
Yeah, I really liked Jim Calvert's TJ.
And it was a connection to the Daily Planet as well, being Perry White's son. Like, it's a shame that they got rid of him.
Yeah. But I could see why Elia did what he did, and I'll mention it a little bit later, is that he just wanted more, like, presence, more experience in there, which is fine. And I think after season 1, Jim really came into his own, I thought, with the TJ White character.
I think also he wanted a name, and since Elan, is it Elan Mitchell?
Elan Mitchell Smith, yeah.
Elan Mitchell Smith. Like, he'd been in Weird Science before that, which was a pretty big, like, John Hughes movie. It might actually be my favorite John Hughes movie.
Yeah, he was really good in that. I know he did the Chocolate Wars. I didn't see that movie, but he had a couple movie credits under his belt.
Which makes him technically the biggest name in season 2.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, it makes sense from a marketing perspective. Like, the main thing I think, like, they wanted was better ratings.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. You put a bigger name in it. It does. It draws more attention. It's like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia adding Danny DeVito for season 2. Like the ratings jumped when Danny DeVito was added because it's Danny DeVito.
Exactly. You want more gravitas. You want to bring a name in. You want to get people talking about the show, and this was Elia's way of getting people to talk about the show after the semi-successful season 1. The first 13 were rough. The last 13, especially those alien episodes, as we've talked about, really hit home where they wanted to go with the series. More sci-fi, more action-oriented, more of the Silver Age comics. And that's what they really established. With season 2, they really went all out towards those comics and embraced those villains, which we'll talk about. And really did stuff that since 1989, no other Superman series has done or has really tried to touch since. And they were very faithful to how they portrayed the villains and certain storylines. And I just thought, like, I was 6 at the time, and my first episode, and we've talked about this, my first episode I've ever saw the show, because I was late to the party, was Bizarro the Thing of Steel. And it was mind-blowing. It was really mind-blowing for me. So
I mean, this show is probably why Bizarro is one of my favorite characters in the Superman comics. Like, if I'm ever at a Comic-Con or a comic book shop and I see an issue that's got Bizarro on the cover that I haven't already got, yeah, I will buy it. Providing it's not like £70 or something like that. Like, I'll buy it. There's a very good chance I'll buy it.
Well, I think it's just a testament to how well they got the character in that second season of the show.
Oh, definitely. Like, even just visually, like the makeup, like for a show with not a lot of budget, like the makeup on Bizarro still holds up. It looks exactly like it did in the comics.
Yeah, it's crazy good how well they did that character and how well the makeup made him look. I mean,
and his performance, like he played it magnificently.
Right.
Like, his performance is what elevates it. Like, you could put anyone in the makeup and they look like Bizarro, but he acted like Bizarro.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, Barry Myers really knocked it out of the park.
And to this day, if I read a comic with Bizarro in it, I hear his voice.
Oh God, yeah. It's hilarious. It is so funny. But like he really, it was like he stepped out of the pages of the comic. They're Bizarro. That's how well. I know some people, we've talked about this on other shows and on other podcasts about why doesn't Bizarro's S, why isn't it backwards?
Just not in the budget.
Wasn't in the budget.
Yeah, they just put him in one of Gerard's suits and occasionally one of John's, like when they needed to do a stunt.
Yeah, let's just give him one of the other suits, or we'll give him a John suit. Right.
They won't notice. It's only for a second.
Yeah, it's only
we noticed.
Right. We did notice. Oh God. Yeah,
it's very rare that it happens, but when it does, you do spot it. It's a totally different S, so of course.
Oh God, it's like, oh, there it is. There it is. Yeah. So let's.
It's like that episode in season 2. Is it Nightmare Island in season 2 where the suit gets cut along the torso, so they just stick him in one of John's?
We'll talk about it. Let's talk about it.
We'll get to that. It's in our second chunk.
It's in our second chunk. We'll get to it, Tom. Tom's jumping ahead.
I can't help it. I go off on tangents.
Okay, so let's start with our first block and start with the season premiere. With This Ring, Ivy Kill Part 1, and then Episode 2, Lex Luthor Sentenced to Death Part 2, and Episode 3, Metallo. So with This Ring, Ivy Kill, they really, like, I mean, it was carnage all over the place in this episode. We had Leo get killed by his best buddy, by Lex, who has a different face. Did plastic surgery to age Lex, to look like Warren Eckworth, which
I think is good. Like, I mean, the whole reason they killed Leo was because if people saw the new Lex with Leo, they'd know it's Lex, but he gives away his identity about halfway through the first episode anyway, so Leo could have stayed alive. Like, I still feel bad for Michael Mano there. I still think there was a way to keep him around.
Well, I just think, and it's funny, shameless plug, if you haven't, go back and listen to our exclusive interview with Michael Mano Leo from the show. It's up there on iTunes, so make sure you go listen to it, because Michael explains exactly why they got rid of him on the series, or they let him go. They didn't fire him.
Such an entertaining episode as well. Like,
it was so much.
We got to get him back, like, definitely. Yes. Maybe multiple times.
Oh, he was so much fun to talk to, and I know he wants to do a commentary on the Luthor Unleashed, the season 1 finale. So we're gonna do that.
That's gonna be good.
But it was all continuity issues. That's why, like you said, like they couldn't keep him around. What Michael said in the interview was, like, you don't hear stories like that from producers coming in and thanking them for being part of the show. And Michael's professionalism in that first season, and even in these first 2 episodes of season 2, really showed the type of actor he was. He loved to joke around, but when it came down to actually doing the work, he hit his mark, and like, he's just a really good actor. And I just hoped, like, they would have brought him back, but nobody ever dies in a sci-fi series or a superhero series, so maybe he's out there. Maybe Leo's out there in the mirror universe somewhere.
Yeah. Well, there's a multiverse in this show, so he's definitely got to be alive in at least one of the other Earths.
Right.
Maybe we'll see him in season 5.
But with this Ring Ivy kill, I thought was a really interesting way of starting the second season. You, as we alluded to, you got rid of most of the first season cast. You bring in a new Superboy with Gerard Christopher as the Boy of Steel. And by then, I think he was in his 30s playing the role. I think it's been stated a number of times that he is one of the oldest actors he was older than Christopher Reeve. Chris, I think, was 20.
I think he was the oldest.
He was the oldest. I think he was 31, 32 when he took the role on.
Although, how old was George Reeves? Because he definitely looked older.
Yeah, I don't know.
I always thought he was close to 40.
I'm sure somebody will comment below and tell us.
Yeah.
John Field knows everything about the George Reeves series, so I'm sure.
John, if you're in the comments, let us know.
Yeah, let us know how old George was when he took on the cape. So, but
it might disprove that common. Yeah, I hear it all the time that Gerard Christopher was the oldest actor to take on the role, but he can't have been older than George Reeves, surely. We'll find out.
We'll find out. John, leave a comment down below and let us know how old George was when he took on the cape. So, but with this Ring Ivy kill, new Superboy, new roommate with Andy Mcallister, played by Elon Mitchell-Smith from Weird Science, as you mentioned, and a new Lex Luthor, played by Chicago native Sherman Howard. And a lot of people know Sherman Howard from his Geico commercial. He's been on pretty much every series you can think of, Star Trek wise. He was on Next Generation I think it was the first or second season.
He's been in Sabrina the Teenage Witch, like Malcolm in the Middle.
He was in Seinfeld. In the one episode where Kramer drops it wasn't Good and Plenty. It was some candy in him as he's having surgery, and he was dating Elaine. It was hilarious. A juju beat or something like that. I forgot. But it was so funny. He was on the Blacklist just recently, I think in the last 2 years. I'm watching the show because I love James Spader, and I'm watching and I'm like, oh my God, there's Sherman Howard. Or Howard Sherman, he goes by now. That's his real name.
Yeah, when we get around to interviewing him one day, I've got to ask him why he switched it.
Yeah,
I've never heard why. Personally.
That's a good question. But
he was in an episode of Person of Interest, if you ever saw that as well.
Yeah.
Not a very big part, but when I saw him, I was just like, okay, this just made it into my top episodes.
There he is.
It's not the best episode, but it's in my favorites list just because he's in it.
Right. Well, it's just like he is a great character actor, and he is somebody that's always had ties to the DC universe on either on film or even voiceover, because I think he did a couple roles in Batman the Animated Series, and then he was a main voiceover character in Batman Beyond. He was David Prowse or David Powers. I forgot the character's name, but he was
David Prowse, Darth Vader's.
Yeah, David Prowse passed away today. So
wait, did he?
Yesterday. Yeah.
Oh God, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
rest in peace, Dave Prowse.
Rest in peace, David Prowse.
Episode dedicated to him.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he trains like Christopher Reeve, like got him in shape and stuff. Like he was a legend in the industry. Oh man, what a shame.
Yeah, it's a shame, but there's our Superman connection for today.
he was a legend in the UK because that was before I was born, but he was known as the Green Cross Code Man, and it was a series of television like infomercials, like teaching kids how to safely cross the street. And he was like a superhero called the Green Cross Code Man. Like, I might have to find those on YouTube and put a screenshot in this episode because he's a legend to so many people for that reason here.
Wow. Yeah, I met him at one of the cons here in Chicago. He was doing a signing. Very nice man. Very, very nice.
I never got the chance to meet him. It's a shame.
Yeah, it's you know what? It's crazy how many people we've lost in 2020. So in the industry. So yeah,
it's been a rough year, man. Like seriously.
Oh God, yeah.
Like even I had bloody COVID. Which is one of the reasons we haven't done an episode in so long.
I'm glad you're better. Glad we're back recording, and
thankfully full recovery.
Thank God. But yeah, like this first episode really set the groundwork for what was to come in season
it set up a lot of stuff for season 2. Like they got a lot done considering it's 20 minutes and it's actually got a storyline going. Like they introduced a lot of things. Like there's basically an introduction to Clark and the new way that Gerard was playing Clark.
Right.
Like the new roommate, you got the new Lex, you got the death of Leo. Like a lot happens, and there's a story as well. Like it's not just an exposition dump.
Well, and then you bring in Lex's new protege or new partner with
I always forget Darla was introduced in this one as well.
Yeah, so like they really took the show in a whole new direction and really made it action oriented and really story driven. And it was just shameless like entertainment. It was just pure comic book entertainment with the second season. And they really again brought in the writers from the comics like Michael Carlin, Andy Helfer, Mark Jones, Carrie Bates. Like you really brought in people that know the character and have written the character for at that point 15, 20 years. So
it was pretty cool in Smallville when they brought in Jeff Johns to write an episode, and people were like, they're getting comic book writers to write an episode. That's amazing. I don't think this has been done before. It's like, Superboy got a lot of comic book writers, like not just one or two, like a lot of them. And some of the greatest as well. Like Mike Carlin was in charge of Superman comics for quite a while, like years and years. Like, he was the main guy in charge.
Well, like right after Superboy, the whole death of Superman storyline, like he oversaw that. He was the editor of those books, and they just celebrated an anniversary of the death of Superman in the comics. So, like, I mean, a lot of people got into those comics and back into comics because of the death of Superman. So
he's in. Mike Carlin's in charge of the DC animated movies at the moment as well.
Right.
Like he has been for a long time, and like there's been a couple that aren't that good, but there's a lot of them that are really, really good.
Well, I keep telling them you got to get some voiceover people from Superboy, like Gerard or John Newton. John Newton. Here we're going off on a tangent, but it's a fun tangent. John Newton. He doesn't use Hames anymore, but John Newton voiced Superman for the Rob Pratt animated shorts that are up on YouTube. Superman Classic. We're gonna have Rob on.
And he voiced Bizarro as well in that. And
he voiced Bizarro, and like he is great. His voice is great for Superman. So I would love to see him like do some voiceover work. Stacy would be great. She does voiceover work for the Star Wars universe. She's been in a couple video games and voiced a couple characters. So
I think it'd be great. Just like it's an animated movie, just throw it to a legacy actor for once, like
right. Or even do like an Elseworld story. You could do a total Elseworld to end the Superboy series. That'd be so cool. You know, like you could.
I did propose that to Mike once, and
did you?
Yeah, and he did actually say, like, unlike with the Batman 66, like Superboy hasn't got quite enough of a following,
right?
To warrant doing that. But I mean, there's nothing to say. Like, just do a Superman animated movie and just get Gerard to do the voiceover. I mean, why not?
Either Gerard or John, both of them are very. They have that Superman-esque voice about them. So
and all you have to do as well is like when you release like the casting, like the announcement of who's going to be in this next animated film, all you have to say is Superman legacy actor Gerard Christopher, who played the role, blah blah blah. And even if fans of Superman haven't seen that particular series, they're going to be like, oh, he did it before, and they're bringing him back. That's awesome. And it might actually get some people to go and buy the DVDs from Warner Archive.
Yeah, it's just like you're just putting that plug in there. that's it.
Even if you haven't seen the show, if you get told an actor that played Superman before is doing it again in an animated movie, like even if you've not seen the original show, you're gonna be like, I'm gonna check this out. That's awesome. I know I would as a Superman fan.
Well, it's just another way for people to discover the series. And like it's funny because I've received so many messages and so many emails about the Superboy series since doing the podcast and starting the website, the new website, that people are finding out about it either on Amazon Prime, DC Universe, and they're enjoying the hell out of it. So this show has a second life and a third life and a fourth life, and people with each passing generation are finding out about the Superboy series. And it's really gratifying to have the actors from the show come up and say thank you for keeping this alive, and that's what we're doing, and I get a kick out of it. So
it deserves to be remembered. It was a good show. Like it's just I would get it if the show was terrible. I mean, and parts of season 1 definitely are.
Oh yeah,
and even some parts of season 2. But I mean, overall, like especially the last couple of years, like it was a damn good show, and it deserves to be remembered. It's not one of those like guilty pleasure ones where you stick it in, you watch it just because you watched it as a kid and it's trash. It's actually good.
Well, I mean, and I know fellow Superboy fans and Superman fans have said to me, like, Sam, it just keeps getting better. Like, it just keeps getting better. Like, each passing year, it got better. And you could tell the lighting, the production value, everything they put into the blood, sweat, and tears, as Barry Myers, Bizarro himself, has told me. Sam, we put our blood, sweat, and tears into each of those episodes, and it shows. We left everything out there on the screen. And they did. They really did.
Like the lighting in season 3 is great. And it's kind of amazing that a show can do that, because often, like, you look at another show that happened right after Lois and Clark. Season 1 was great. Season 2 was good. Season 3, it dropped in quality slightly, and season 4 was just fucking terrible.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, that's usually how it goes. Towards the end of a show's life is usually the worst it got. Not with Superboy, which is what's so frustrating about it. Because can you imagine how good an actual season 5 would have been?
Yeah, then like just some of the ideas we set forth in our fan fiction season 5.
But imagine what the real one would have been like.
Yeah, it just would have been interesting, very, very interesting to see where they would have taken the series if DC and Warner's let them. That was the thing. So
that's the thing. Like DC and Warner, I think they would have been smart if they actually said, "Look, Superboy's kind of run its course as Superboy. How about we co-produce a Superman show and just make it a continuation? Give Superboy season 5, give it the budget that Lois and Clark had. Like, it would have been fantastic.
Well,
the show would have been remembered.
Well, you see it with Marvel and Sony, how they work in conjunction with each other to let Spider-Man be in the MCU. So,
and they'd still recast Spider-Man, though.
Yeah.
But then again, after Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is just a bad movie overall, like, it's fair enough. Although I do feel bad for Andrew Garfield, because you can tell he was
great. Oh, he was great. I liked Andrew Garfield. I didn't have a problem with Andrew Garfield.
He was a good Spider-Man. I just don't think he was a great Peter Parker. But that's not because of anything he was doing. That was down to the script and the direction. Although I think the director was kind of Yeah, so Sony interfered a lot with that movie.
Yeah, they did.
But we're not here to talk about Spider-Man.
Hands off, Sony. Like, stop sending notes,
We still haven't got past the first episode. We've tangented so much, and it's half an hour.
It's okay. It's been a while since we've podcast. Thank you for bearing with us. If you've made it this far into the podcast, we're going to get back to our season 2 overview right now. So here we go. So episode 1 was With This Ring, Ivy Kill. Episode 2, Lex Luthor, Sentenced to Death. Episode 3, Metallo. So out of those 3, like, what was your favorite out of those 3?
I think out of this first 3 is going to be the most difficult decision because you had 3 solid episodes back to back.
Right.
But I'm going to go with Lex Luthor Sentenced to Death.
Okay.
Just because I love the stuff with Gerard, like doing the physical therapy training. Yeah. Like trying to get back on his feet. I really enjoyed that. And I like the wedding scene where Leo's in the coffin and all of that. Yeah, I'm going to go with that one. Like, the first one is good as well, and it's very difficult to separate them, but I think the second part had more in it that I enjoyed.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll go with episode 2 too. 2. So,
but no, I'll shot of Superboy falling from the window in the wheelchair, and the wheelchair's still attached to him, and he's just spinning.
Yeah,
it's just comedic gold.
Oh, it is and getting shot with that little missile in the chest and it just disappeared. It was just like, really, just that little explosion. Like, come on, the entire apartment would have been gone. So, but like, it was just that those first 2 episodes really set the precedent for what was to come in season 2. And Gerard's Superboy really resonated with audiences because you saw the numbers go up even more. But I think Lex Luthor Sentenced to Death was really, you had a new Lex who was menacing at the flip of a coin. He could be serious and then comedic and then just downright like, I'm going to kill you. Like, he was Sherman Howard was great.
That takes a lot of talent as well. Like, to be both comedic and menacing is very difficult. It's something that certain actors that played the Joker didn't manage to do.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of amazing. Like, people say, oh, Jesse Eisenberg in Batman vs Superman is more, he's less playing Lex and more playing sort of like the Riddler. But I don't know, if he wanted to go a bit more wacky with it, it's a shame that he hadn't watched Sherman Howard, because it might have changed how he approached it. Like, the perfect Lex to me would be somewhere between Michael Rosenbaum and Sherman Howard. Like, if you could find a perfect middle ground, that's it.
Well, I always thought Sherman was playing the Silver Age Lex Luthor mad scientist.
Yeah, and he was great at it. Like, and that's a version of Lex that I don't think you see in any other media. Because Superman the movie, even though his name was Lex Luthor and he's still a criminal genius, he didn't do a lot of mad science stuff. Like, he mostly did like property deals and stuff like that. He just wanted to buy land.
Yeah, he was the business swindler that we saw in the 80s comics with John Byrne. John Byrne's reinvention in Man of Steel was very much...
That has to have been part of the inspiration as well.
Yeah, definitely. But let's get on to the next 3 episodes. Episode 4, Young Dracula, written by Mr. Elias Salkin, producer. And then episode 5...
He wrote that episode. That explains a lot, actually.
Episode 5, Nightmare Island, written by Mark Jones, directed by David Nutter. And then episode 6, Bizarro the Thing of Steel, directed by Kenneth Bowser and written by Mark Jones. And you know what? I'm going to throw episode 7 in as well into this.
Yeah, we might as well, because it's
Battle with Bizarro, part 2, written by, again, Mark Jones and directed by David Nutter, Mr. Spielberg of television. So out of these 4,
I think it's obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a combined win between the 2 Bizarro episodes. Although I do want to give an honourable mention to Nightmare Island.
Okay.
Because I do really enjoy Nightmare Island, even though it's not the best episode. But I don't know. I love the end of the episode where the bad guy in it gets into his spaceship that's clearly just a washing machine or a tumble dryer. Like,
yeah.
I showed that to my niece when she was little, and she actually said, "Is that a magic washing machine?"
Do you
I was
really
like, yes, it is.
Do you really think they got the actor into that thing? I think he just put his foot in and that was it.
Yeah. I can't imagine being able to convince someone to actually get into that. Right. Especially since they're like airtight. So once he was in, it might have been very difficult to get him out again if they shut the door.
Oh, that's so funny. But you mentioned John Newton's tunic being in that episode.
Yeah. That's another reason I like the episode a lot. Plus it's got the whole like Superboy gets hurt in it, and when he sees like doesn't he cut his hand or something, and then he's like he sees the bloods and he like freaks out a little bit for a second.
Well, it's funny.
That's just cool stuff.
Well, it's funny because that episode, when you get to that scene, they cut that scene in certain territories in the world when they aired it. Yeah, when Superboy,
such a shame. It's like the most powerful moment of the episode.
It's like so he's walking with Andy and they're looking for Lana because Lana's been captured by the alien.
Yeah.
So Andy and Superboy come across and are walking in the forest in the whatever on the island, and Superboy trips a wire and gets hit in the hand with an arrow right in his hand.
Goes straight through his hand, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. And it's funny.
I don't know the censorship with that. Do you know if they cut the scene in Metallo where he slits the Doctor's throat and comes out covered in blood?
No, because
they left that in, but the hand was too far.
They left that in, but that arrow shot of the arrow going into Superboy's hand, because they blatantly showed it in the uncut episode where the arrow hits him right in the hand, and there's not even any gore or anything. It's just a little bit of blood around the arrow. That's the budget. But like
I always find it hilarious when like the TV censorship, like I assume it was the FCC or something, but
yeah,
it's like it always amazes me when they think kids can't stand to see a little bit of blood, considering how often when you were a kid did you fall over and graze your knee and there was blood.
Yeah,
like kids fall down all the time. Like I can't even tell you how many times I like gotten up and I've got scraped up knees and there's blood dripping down my leg. Like kids don't mind that. They cry obviously if they're little enough, but I mean kids get hurt all the time. They've seen plenty of blood. They can take it.
Well, I think this show, like I think that's one of the only times we saw blood on the series. Maybe I'm wrong. Somebody
maybe that and Metallo. Like I don't know. I can't remember any other episodes with blood in it.
One of the only two times maybe was Metallo in this episode. I don't know.
There must have been a bit of blood in Young Dracula.
Yes, probably.
You can't and Run Dracula.
Without
you
blood.
You can't do a vampire story without at least a little bit of blood.
So like my favorite, I'm definitely gonna pick Bizarro the Thing of Steel. That was the first episode I've ever seen from the show that got me hooked onto the show. What was it, about 15, 16 years ago? One of the first props I ever bought from the show was from Profiles in History, and it was one of the stunt masks that Barry wore as Bizarro. It's not a hero mask or a bust, but it's one of the masks he wore. And only two I know of have survived. There's the bust down at the Superman Museum, and it's the one I have. Whenever they finished a scene or finished an episode, they would rip the mask off of him. It was seven interlocking parts, and they toss them. So Rob Berman,
that's nuts that they just threw them away. Like,
they just
at that point they would know that props are worth keeping around because you can sell them to fans, like auction them off. Like even if you just auctioned it off for charity or something and didn't actually keep the money, like.
Well, it was funny because Profiles in History is a very reputable auction house in Calabasas, California. I was just there last December for a Superboy item, and they did not know that mask was from Superboy. They had it listed from Lois and Clark, which was hilarious because I remember talking to Profiles and going, "Yeah, this is not Lois and Clark." They're like, "Oh," and I won. I won the mask, obviously, but it was just like when I got the mask and I got the tag that went with it. It says Bizarro from Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, 1993. I'm like, well, this is 1989. So they had no idea what it was from. So
it's crazy because Lois and Clark did kind of do a Bizarro episode, but it was they didn't do any makeup. It was just Dean Cain acting like a toddler.
Right. And Smallville did the same thing. They had Tom Welling play Bizarro. And
they did have a very brief CG thing where they kept having his face flash and it would look like Bizarro for a second, but that was purely CGI.
And that's not Bizarro. Like, I still feel to this
day... It's like
day,
a proto-Bizarro.
Right. I mean, I just feel to this day, Superboy did something that no Superman series has done since. And that's
Supergirl had a Bizarro, and that was pretty decent makeup. But at the same time, I think Bizarro died at the end of it, which is a shame because Bizarro is a cool character to keep around. And it would have been fun to have Bizarro Supergirl come back for a future episode, but what can you do?
Well, I always liked the idea of what Superboy put out there was that Bizarro is Superboy's brother because Superboy has nobody. So I like the idea of Clark and Superboy going and talking to Bizarro because he's the only person that can relate to him with those powers. So the idea of presenting him as Superboy's brother, like, loved it. I really loved it.
I love it too. Like, it's one of my favorite aspects of the character.
So out of these four, I'm going to, like you did, give a nice mention in Young Dracula because I'm a big Dracula guy. I love Dracula as a character.
Like certain Dracula projects.
Yeah, what Ilya did in Young Dracula, having Superman or Superboy presented with the Prince of Darkness, fighting the Prince of Darkness, I really like that idea. I just wish they would have cast somebody else in the role, like as Dracula. But
it was just an old man. It was clearly a Halloween costume.
It was an old man in a Party City costume, which was shit. They could have got Duncan Rainier from Monster Squad. That would have been amazing.
I mean, a little bit of legacy casting would have been great.
Yeah, or at the time they had Dracula the series on the same time as Superboy. And Geordie Johnson played Dracula on that show. That would have been a cool crossover. Like that could work. But yeah, like I liked the idea of young Dracula with his son, Byron, and trying to find a way of curing himself of being a vampire. I really like that idea.
Also, at the time, were Christopher Lee or Frank Langella really up to much? I'm sure they could have got one of them.
Right.
Like they both kind of came back in, like they both sort of had career comebacks later on, but I can't remember much about what they were doing at that time.
Well, it was funny because Christopher Lee at the time did a spot on the 1991-92 Nickelodeon show, The Tomorrow People, and he played a character, a villain on there. So yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Just get Christopher Lee to come and play Dracula. How amazing would that have been? Like,
that would have been so cool.
And that would have been another way for the show to have lived on in people's memories. Like, did you know Christopher Lee played Dracula in an episode of Superboy? It's like, oh my god.
Well, and then Superboy could have just added to that incredible guest star list that they've already achieved up into that
legacy
point.
Casting is just always a good idea, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
because it's just always a good idea. You can't go wrong with it.
So let's go on to our next 3 episodes.
Okay.
Episode 8, Mr. and Mrs. Superboy. Episode 9, Program for Death. Episode 10, Superboy's Deadly Touch.
For me, it's got to be Mr. and Mrs. Superboy.
Yeah.
Superboy's Deadly Touch is a fun idea, so maybe we'll touch on that for a minute as well. But Mr. and Mrs. Superboy, I love Mixture Spidlick.
Yeah.
And Michael Pollard was just fantastic in that role. Easily the best Mixie that there's been on screen.
Yeah, I mean, he looked the character, he sounded the character, he embodied that character, from season 1. That was the one villain that they did bring over into season 2 was Mixie. And talking to Michael J. Pollard about it a couple years ago, 2010, I was in Anaheim, and he was there. Sorry, I'm going to get off on a Superboy.
No, go for it.
So I met Michael J. Pollard with Ilya Sulkin, the first time I met Ilya, we talked for a couple years up until that point, but I never met Ilya in person. So I met Ilya at Anaheim, Wizard World Anaheim, and I met Aaron Smolinski from Superman the movie, who played Baby Clark at Anaheim, and it was a really cool show. And there was, and I saw Michael J. Polyer was there. So it's funny because there was a shop in Los Angeles called Hollywood Book and Poster, and they had a ton of Superboy photos. So
I've heard of this shop. I think I've heard Kevin Smith talk about this shop.
It was a great shop. It's gone now, but it was an amazing store for photos, posters, anything you could think of Hollywood. Like,
didn't they sell scripts as well?
They had scripts too. Yeah.
I vaguely remember hearing Kevin Smith talk about buying scripts there.
Yeah, it was a great store, and it was they were the only ones that had a ton of Superboy stuff. They had about 40, 50 different slides from the show. They had Viacom press photos. So like I called them up. They had an 8x10 photo of Michael as Mixie. So they were at the show as well. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna order it when they're at the show. I'll pick up the photo and I'll bring it over to Michael J. Polyer and have him sign it. And that's what I did. So I get the photo, I bring it over to Michael, we start talking, and he tells me about he totally forgot about the show. He's like, "Oh yeah, like I can't believe it." His assistant, Michael, funny, his name was Michael too. Tells me, "Sam, where did you get this photo?" "Oh, I got it from Hollywood Book and Poster." He's like, "How do you remember this show?" I go, "Well, Superboy was the first thing I ever got into, Superman related." And he's like, "Can I borrow this photo?" I was like, "Yeah." So Michael, his assistant, gets up and goes and makes a copy of that photo for Michael's table. He sells out of that photo like crazy. He signs a ton of them. And it was just awesome. It was really cool. Michael J. Polyer signed my little Mixus Pitalik statue that I had from DC Direct. DC Direct. So he signed the base of it. So I have that. But we were talking about Chicago, how he was from the Cicero area, which is not far from me. So it was really, really cool to talk to him. I got a great photo of me standing with him behind his booth there.
I think I've seen that photo.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. And it was just to talk about the show. He really enjoyed being on that series. I have an interview that he did back when they were filming that I'm going to release soon. But
awesome.
It was really, really cool to hear him talk about being on the set and how he would tease Stacy and stuff like that. But it was funny.
That got to have been amazing for him as well, though, just because, like as you said, like he'd forgotten that he did the show, but then once he sees the picture, it's like all these memories come flooding back, and that must have been really wonderful for him.
He totally forgot, but like it was because they had stuff from Bonnie and Clyde, they had stuff from when he was on Star Trek, but nothing from Superboy. So I came up to him with the photo, and he's like, "Oh my God, that's ridiculous." He's like, and his assistant said to me, "How old were you?" I go, "Well, I was like 7 when I saw that episode." He's like, "Oh my God." He's like, "This is great. This is great. Do you have more of this stuff?" And then I remember his assistant saying to me, "Sam, that statue, is it licensed?" I go, "Yeah, it's from DC Direct." So they got a kick out of seeing all that stuff. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, it was great. But yeah, like Mr. and Mrs. Superboy out of this block of 3, I think is definitely my favorite.
Oh, definitely.
So let's get on to our next 3.
Should we quickly talk about Superboy's Deadly Touch for a second?
Yeah.
Just because I kind of enjoy that episode, although I don't remember that much about it. That's the one where his powers go a little bit haywire, isn't it?
It was Lex and Darla. Superboy grabs the bumper of the bus.
The school bus.
The school bus. And Lex and Darla are pretending to be nuns on the side of the road, which is pretty funny.
I just like it because there's that shot where he goes to do the shirt rip and the shirt just falls apart in his hands.
Yeah.
That's just a fun shot. And yeah, it's a fun episode. It's not the most memorable episode, but it is a fun one. So just wanted to give it a quick honorable mention.
And I think Superboy wearing that helmet and using his heat vision, because Lex is getting to him in that lab when Lex is singing to him because his super hearing is out of whack. I thought that was hilarious. That was so funny. And you could tell Sherman is just having a blast with that scene. It's just so funny.
It's just always fun when you can mess with Superman's powers or Superboy's powers. And
Yeah.
either take the powers away or supercharge them. Like, it's just a fun idea for a story, and you don't need to give it that much thought beyond that. Like, it's just a fun concept. So
I think the other actor we haven't yet mentioned in this, who's prevalent throughout season 2, is Professor Peterson's, played by George Chakiris. He was great. They brought him over
in season 1. Was he in Kryptonite Kills?
Right. He was in the Alien episodes, and then he was in Kryptonite Kills. But they brought his character over. So I thought,
one of the few actors. Like, people always say, "Oh, Stacey was the only one to come back for season 2 who was in season 1," but there were a couple of others.
Right.
Not main characters, obviously, but
I felt George Chakiris really brought something to Professor Peterson. He was the science-based, character that Superboy needed to help him battle Lex and battle Bizarro, So there was a sort of quasi Team Superboy in a way. You see all these shows today. Well, we have Team Flash, and like everybody knows Flash's secret. So like, it was nice that it was one person, and then Superboy had his Martha and Jonathan, but like, to help him battle like the forces of evil, so to speak, like, he had Professor Peterson, so that was kind of cool.
Which was basically like a prototypical Emil Hamilton from the comics.
Yes.
Emil Hamilton basically did a very similar sort of role, and his character changed a lot over the years. But yeah, Peterson was basically, I think, because they couldn't use Hamilton.
Well, they did that on Lois and Clark, remember? They did it in
he was in the cloning episode with the gangsters, which is great. And I think he did come back for another episode later on.
Mm-hmm.
But and Smallville made him a main character in the last couple of seasons. And he was great. The version in Smallville was fantastic of Hamilton.
Well, they kind of played him for comic relief on Lois and Clark. I didn't really care for that. That was,
but he was still an intelligent person.
Yeah. Well, let's get on to the next 3. Episode 11, The Power of Evil. Episode 12, Superboy, Rest in Peace. And episode 13, Super Menace, which saw the return of Metallo, that was great.
I think this one's obvious for me. It's got to be Super Menace. But Rest in Peace is interesting because a lot of people say that it's basically them trying to do the Legion of Superheroes without doing the Legion of Superheroes.
Right.
Which is interesting because when I'm writing season 5, the Legion episode, like, I may have to tie it in and reveal that they actually were at least connected to the Legion.
Yeah.
Which might be fun. But the episode in general is not one of my favorites. The Super Menace is definitely my pick for that.
Yeah, out of these 3, definitely Super Menace, with honorable mentions for Superboy, Rest in Peace, which I felt was a ripoff of Terminator. It felt like a ripoff of Terminator.
It was definitely a ripoff of Terminator.
Yeah.
And there were a couple in Superboy. Like, they basically, in the second Alien episode in season 1, they kind of had a Terminator-ish thing going on there.
Well, I just wish...
But this was more blatant.
I wish there was more scenes between Superboy and Serene, because I really like Serene's character. Was she Clark's daughter? Like, they've never really hinted on that. Why, out of all the people that send back, why Serene? Like, that's another thing that was never really answered.
I need to watch that episode again at some point, because it's been a hell of a long time.
Well, she was a descendant, but she was a descendant of Superman, but like, they never really alluded to, was she his daughter? Was she somebody in the family? Like, it had to be somebody close to Clark. So I just thought it was interesting that they never really paid that off, and I felt like there should have been 1 or 2 more scenes in there. I shouldn't say daughter, because she fell in love with him. So, I
think it's a distant relative.
Distant relative,
like how there's ancestors, or not ancestors, but descendants of Superman in the Legion of Superheroes stories. Like, occasionally there'll be a Superboy from the year 3000 or something.
Right, or maybe it was another superhero that heard of the stories of Superman. And
I don't remember if she actually was related to him. That would have been a bit strange if she did fall in love with him.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. But like, I just thought it was like, maybe it's somebody.
Unless maybe Superman adopted someone, and like she's a descendant of his adopted daughter or something. It's still a little bit strange.
Very strange. But it was interesting in the sense that she knew like his future, and she kept alluding to, oh, you're destined for greatness. It was very Smallville-esque, that episode. Somebody coming from the future and telling Clark, hey, you know what? You're destined for great things. And then like, I always like the idea of seeing the hero doubt himself to a certain degree, but then somebody comes in from the future or out of time and says, hey, you know what? You're destined to do this. So even though it's always
best to do the sort of the doubting themselves story as Superboy rather than Superman, because being young, you do have when you're young, you have a lot of doubts about if you're doing the right thing. What's my future going to be, like that sort of thing. It's a big theme.
Yeah,
for especially when you're a teenager, like everything is a question about like, are you doing the right thing? How's this going to affect my future? Like, yeah. Just makes sense for the younger version of the character. It just doesn't quite make as much sense when he's like 30 odd. Right. He's been Superman for a long time, and
we can't do this episode. It doesn't make any sense. So,
I mean, you can have doubts, but maybe not to such an extent.
Well, Super Menace was the best out of these three that we picked, and
definitely, it's always fun to see Clark turn evil.
Oh God, yeah. I mean,
Red Kryptonite is just such a fun thing. Like, it's odd in the early comics. Like, Red Kryptonite had unpredictable effects, and it was different every time, which was fun. I don't know if this was the first time Red Kryptonite was used to make him evil. Maybe it had been done in the comics before this.
Yeah, but it was never. I don't think it was ever done in live action up until that point. So I think this was the first time that they did Red Kryptonite on the screen. So, and I just like how Superboy just goes completely crazy in a way. Him robbing a bank, him at the bar with Metallo. That was a great scene.
I love that he teams up with Metallo just to betray him at the end. Just like, what, did you really think I would work with you? I was just using you. I just want the money.
I think the one scene that stands out in that episode is when Superboy and Metallo take on that tank. I just thought was hilarious, and the two of them just laughing it off, like when he puts the missile back into the tank, was just that was a funny moment.
Yeah,
but
it's just funny moments. Super Menace. I wish they'd done more with the Red Kryptonite stuff. Would have been fun to have it come back later on.
I love the newspaper of Superboy lifting the cop car, and it says Super Menace right there on the Daily Planet newspaper that Clark's reading, and Andy's reading. He's like in the dorm. That was a great. I want to find that newspaper. It's so cool.
That would be pretty cool to find. I always love when there's a Daily Planet reference. Like, TJ's gone, but the Daily Planet is still at least a presence in the show.
Yeah. But it's that Superboy lifting the cop car is a nod to Superman 4 with Superman lifting the taxi. There's photos on Cape Wonder of Chris Reeve's Superman lifting the taxi, and this is their version of that shot in Superboy. So. And I think that's
my favorite version of that. The Christopher Reeve version is that photo. I think it's on Cape Wonder, and it's the shot of him lifting the taxi. But obviously, they thought, let's do a funny one as well. And it's just one where it's just one finger.
That's
just
great.
Great photo.
Yeah, it would have been fun, even funnier if he was yawning, and lifting it with the one finger. So let's go on to the next three. Episode 14, Yellow Perry's Spell of Doom. Episode 15, Microboy. And episode 16, Run, Dracula, Run, the sequel to Young Dracula.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of any of these, but Microboy probably takes it just because I find it hilarious. Like, the costume is just terrible. And I do quite like the ending, how Superboy takes him, basically doesn't he send him back in time to before there's microwaves, and I just think that's really cool. That's a really fun ending. Like, it's not a great episode, but it had some good ideas, and
it's funny because Stacy had a crush on the guy who played Microboy, so she mentioned that in an interview.
I'm guessing he looked a little bit less geeky. Like without the glasses and all that stuff on.
And the
But that's the
actor,
way.
yeah,
Even if someone's playing a geek and they're not supposed to be conventionally attractive, like usually, like they always seem to cast actors that are definitely attractive. Like it's funny, like you see nerds in TV and movies all the time, and they're supposed to be like the girls don't want to give them the time of day. But outside of the movie world, in the real world, they probably do all right.
yeah. Well, the actor who played Hector Hornsby, aka Microboy, in the episode was actor Frank Military, and Frank has since become really well known for directing TV, and he's
Oh,
directed a number of shows like NCIS, Los Angeles, The Last Castle. So he's been pretty predominant on television. He was a co-producer on The Unit, Jericho.
yeah.
I'm just looking at some of his
That's cool.
credits on IMDb. So he is really predominant. He's a writer and producer on a lot of television shows that you see. He was on Windfall. He was a supervising producer. So yeah, I mean, he's
What's his
gone
name?
on
Because I wanted to
to
just see if there's anything I've seen that he's done. What's his full name?
Frank Military.
Frank Military.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, he went on to have a nice career in television. He was on Star Trek Deep Space Nine as an actor.
That's cool.
Yeah. So a lot of Star Trek parallels with Superboy. You had Sherman Howard, you had Frank on there. So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen really any of the shows that he's worked on, but it's still an impressive list.
Yeah. I mean, Frank, like, it's funny because I thought he was in an episode of Sliders for a second, but no, he wasn't. But you know, he was great.
He said Deep Space Nine. He did an X-Files. Like, yeah,
he was great.
CSI episode in 2002. Yep. I feel
yeah,
so old knowing how old CSI is.
But it's cool that he went on to have a nice little nice career for himself in television. You know, past Superboy and stuff like that. That was really cool.
It's always nice to see.
So out of these three, I would definitely say Microboy was probably the best. But I'm gonna give a nice nod to Run Dracula Run because it gave us a moment right out of Superman lore where Superboy is stringed up in the airplane hangar in chains, right? And he's fighting and he breaks the chains. Very just I mean, that's an iconic shot out of Superman comic book, you know, out of the Superman comics, is Superman breaking those chains. And it's just very it's just such a cool scene. And it was such a great scene that in seasons 3 and 4 they put that shot of Gerard breaking the chains.
Yeah, it's in the title sequence.
In the title sequence. So I just wish they would have filmed it a little bit differently and like instead of him knocking his head back, you know, and all you see is the S, it was like we need a full frame shot of that because like it was just a great scene, and I just wish they would have took a little bit more time to film that one instance, that one moment, and just
an iconic moment. Yeah, you kind of wish that they had, but yeah, they probably just pushed for time, which is a shame. Exactly. Maybe it looked better when they filmed it originally. Yeah. Like since they shot it on film, maybe it looks better in high definition.
Yeah, maybe.
If we ever get a Blu-ray, it will look better.
Well, let's go on to the next couple episodes. Episode 17, Brimstone. Episode 18, Abandon Earth, and episode 19, Escape to Earth.
I'm gonna go with Abandon Earth rather than Escape to Earth, just because I like all the stuff. Like, I like the way that they gain his trust, and when he's like they're going around, like they stop. Like, don't they have to like burn their way through a safe door or something? And he's like, my heat vision won't do it quick enough. It's like, but maybe the three of us can. And it's like, I like the first half more than the second.
Yeah, I think the build up in episode 1 or the part 1 of that 2-parter, Abandon Earth, was just really well executed, and I love the idea of Martha and Jonathan having a conversation. Like, what if his, real parents show up? How are we going to react? And like, I just really like that episode. And the two of them, as the episode concludes, realize that they're not who they say they are, and that they're, I just think and them just, the
way they got tricked into thinking they said goodbye and they didn't.
And they didn't. That was a great episode. And that was the episode. Those two episodes were the first time that Clark actually finds out where he has come from, and that his world.
Part of the reason I didn't choose part 2 is because the fact they took away that knowledge.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest disservice of those two episodes. Was you built up this whole like idea that Clark finally discovers his parents, and his parents are,
alive.
If
it hadn't turned out to be a lie, it would have been quite a ballsy move to actually have his parents be alive.
Right.
Like recent years, they revealed that Jarrell is still alive, but it would have been. I'm not sure I would have liked it if his parents turned out to actually be alive. So you knew there must have been something going on.
Right, but I think the execution that they were a shape-shifting race and that they prayed, and I just thought the whole idea, and that I think the thing with them was, what was their power set too? Like, they could shapeshift, but then like when they say the powers, when they say the line to Clark, like, "Oh, we extracted the data from your infant memories." Like, what else can you do? Honestly, like, what else can you do? Like, it was really an interesting episode, and
it's almost a shame they couldn't come back later on.
Yeah,
it would have been like, especially that episode, Paranoia in season. Is it season 3 or season 4?
That's season 4. Yeah.
Like, it would have been pretty cool, like, to have it turn out that the aliens that are causing the paranoia are shapeshifters. And it's them. Like, but yeah, didn't they? I think they died or something at the end of the episode, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
So
Slug basically.
Still, it would have been cool to have like the same species come back at some point.
Yeah. Well, Slug basically puts them in their original state, and they're breathing in all the oxygen because they weren't. Their suits weren't, they couldn't breathe our oxygen. So he takes the protective suit away, and that's how they end up, winning the day. Superboy and Slug and Lana, go back to, like it never happened, which that was such a cop-out.
It doesn't even really work from a time travel perspective. And Lois and Clark did the same thing with the first episode with Tempest.
Tempest, the H.G. Wells episode. Yeah,
it's like, it's fine. I'll send you back to before this adventure happened, and you won't remember a thing. It's like, surely if you do that, there'd be 2 Loises and 2 Clarks in that time. Like, unless first thing H.G. Wells does when he gets back is kill the extra 2. Like, it just doesn't make sense, even from a time travel thing. Like, I don't know. I think if you're going to do time travel in an episode, especially if it's the resolution to an episode, try and make it make sense. I know it's time travel, but it's not that complicated.
Well, I always thought, like, with these episodes, you wanted to tell Clark where he came from, but then you take it away. And the other big thing was Lana finding out that she's been lied to the entire time, that Clark is Superboy. And
I wish there was some way to have it reveal that Clark actually kept that memory.
Yeah.
Like, it's all right, we'll erase Lana's memory of that part, but Clark.
Right. Well, I think the other thing too was, and we saw it in the films with Margot Kidder's Lois, when she gets kissed at the end of Superman 2, that her the amnesia kiss that she totally forgets that Clark is Superman. And then we find out in Superman 4, she does remember, and she says Kal-El.
She only remembers once he reveals his identity to her again. And it's like all the memories come flashing.
Exactly.
Back.
So I always thought, like, that'd be a perfect way in Superboy to, like, Lana does remember, it's just suppressed. Yeah. So that those events did happen, that Clark is from Krypton, Well, I mean, we know he's from
Would be a
Krypton, but
pretty funny sequence because you couldn't let the people on Earth remember either.
yeah.
So it's just a funny sequence of Clark running around at super speed, just kissing people.
Oops. Yeah, wasn't there was like a there was a funny cartoon on YouTube that they were Superman. Oh, Robot Chicken did that, where Superman's other power, he's just kissing all his villains so they forget that they hate him. So yeah, that's really funny. That's on Robot Chicken. So check that out. That's so funny. But yeah. But yeah, that was, I just always thought like you told two really good episodes with Abandon Earth and Escape to Earth, but the payoff was everybody forgets.
Yeah, I don't like the ending at all.
Yeah.
First half is great. First episode is fantastic.
God. The build up to it was fantastic, and we got to mention George Lazenby as Jor-El was fantastic, and Britt Ekland as Lara was fantastic, and
I always like George Lazenby just because I think his Bond film is my favorite of the Bond films, and I just think he doesn't get nearly enough credit or work,
right.
And I'm always happy to see him in something.
Well, it's funny because they're both on Instagram, and I think either Cape Wonder or me posted an image, a behind-the-scenes image of the three of them standing in costume, and George retweeted it, and then Britt Ekland retweeted it, and I remember underneath the comments that George said, "This was such a fun time," and then Britt Ekland's like, "Yeah, it was fun playing superheroes." so they remember like playing those roles, and it would just be so cool to get them on and talk to them about being in these.
I'd love to get George Lazenby on, especially.
Yeah, George was really, and it's funny because I asked Gerard in a conversation like, who is one of the guest stars you remember working with, and who was one of the most, who'd you learn a lot from on the show? And immediately he said George Lazenby. So he had nothing but good things to say about George working with him on these two episodes. Just his professionalism on the set and the way he carried himself. Gerard said he'll never forget those two in particular. Gerard said like working with them was really, really a highlight of his career. So
he's a funny man as well. Like, I remember there's a quote from him. I think it's from a documentary about the Bond films, and he says, "I may have been the Bond that did the least movies, but I slept with the most Bond girls in real life."
Wow, that's crazy.
Like 7 or 8 of the Bond girls from the other films, just not the one from his film.
That is so funny.
It's pretty funny. I just imagine he just meets them at conventions or something and seduces them.
Oh my god! Yeah.
What
was that? I'm sorry.
What a lad! He's just a lad.
Yeah. But he was great as Bond.
He was really good. It's just I think he rubbed some of the producers the wrong way.
Yeah.
And showing up to the premiere with long hair and a beard didn't help because they wanted their Bond actor to look like Bond when he showed up, and he refused because he was getting in with some hippies at the time.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He's convinced him that like short hair and like suits aren't cool anymore. You've got to have long hair, a beard, and be wearing like tie dye and stuff. Not realizing that like suits and tuxedos and stuff are just timeless.
Yeah, you gotta dress the part, man. Come on. All right, let's go on to the next three. Episode 20, Superstar. Episode 21, Knick Knack. Gilbert Gottfried as Knick Knack was amazing. I'm just throwing that in there. Episode 22, The Haunting of Andy Mcallister.
It's got to be Knick Knack for me.
Okay.
Even though it's clearly the toy, it's supposed to be the Toy Man.
Right.
And maybe in season 5 it will be revealed that he is Toy Man, or maybe he's like Toy Man's apprentice who stole the spotlight and he gets killed by the real Toy Man or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Either way, I'm going to do something with Knick Knack in season 5. And it will be a Toy Man episode as well. So,
yeah, I really liked Knick Knack. It was a good episode. Just the way he went about depowering Superboy to a certain extent, with his giant super suit. Like they didn't even really think of calling it anything else. They're just like, my robotic super suit. It's just like
doesn't need to be anything else, does it? It's like,
yeah. But it was just so funny.
Exactly what it's supposed to be.
I just laugh every time he stands and he throws the switch and the light comes on and he's just standing in front of the super suit, my robotic super suit. I'm like, oh god. But he was great.
Knick-knack?
What's that?
Was this the only Knick-knack episode, or did he come back? I'm trying to think.
He came back in later in the season.
It wasn't the beginning of this episode, was it, where he's in prison? I think that's his second episode.
It's the second episode that he's in prison.
I just love that line where he's just like, he drops something. He's like, I dropped something on the floor. Not a good idea to do in prison.
Right. Oh, his food tray he dropped. Yeah, that was so funny.
Not a good idea to drop something in prison. It's just like, oh my god, they just made a prison rape joke in a Superboy episode.
So bad.
That must have been an ad-lib. Like, that can't have been in the script.
But Gilbert was fantastic as Knick-knack. I wish they would have brought him back. Instead
I always love Gilbert Gottfried. Like, he's just fantastic. Everything. Like, his voice just cracked me up. He's so funny.
And it's funny because he went on, not just being a great comedian, but he went on again, another actor from Superboy, to voice Mxyzptlk in Superman the Animated Series. He was fantastic.
Which some say is the definitive version of the character as well. But I would say it's definitely the definitive animated version. I'm not going to argue with that. I still prefer Michael Pollard.
Yeah, I mean, and he was in Aladdin as the bird. What was the bird's name? I'm sorry. Somebody comment below. Iago. Yeah, he was. He's just a great character actor and just a great comedian. I love Gilbert Gottfried. And another thing that he has done that nobody from the Superboy cast, when the comic was running, when the tie-in comic was running, he got to write a DC comic book, and he wrote the origin of Knick-knack. I think it was issue 22, or not 22. I gotta look and see what it is.
22, I think, was
22 was the end, but I think it was like 18 or 19, maybe even 20. It was like the last block of comics. I think within the last 5 or 6, he was in the last.
Isn't it amazing though that he got to do that? Just I want to write the origin story for my character. Just like
it was
Gilbert Gottfried. Like, let him do what he wants. If he wants to write an issue of the comic, it's bound to sell because people will be like, that's awesome that he's written it himself. And I think they even put on the cover that it was written by him. So
yeah. And it's funny because I tweeted that out on the Superboy Legacy Twitter handle, and he saw it because I tagged him in it, and he retweeted it. It was so funny, and it was a few years ago. I tweeted that out, and he got a kick out of it. And then he mentioned it on a podcast, on his Gilbert Gottfried podcast. He had a guest on who was a big DC fan, and he talked a little bit. Oh, I wrote a Superman comic. And he's not going to remember it was Superboy, but he wrote a comic and he got a kick out of it. So he remembers that even to this day, that he wrote a Superman comic and is very proud of it. So I would love to get him on here and talk about it.
Oh, that'd be awesome. It's funny to me as well. Like, it was a couple of years ago now, but when I realized that that's not actually his voice, he just does the same voice in everything he does, including his stand-up. But actually, he's quite soft-spoken. Like, he's
yeah.
I think the only thing on TV or movies or whatever that he's done his own voice was one line in Arrested Development. There's an episode where the character Tobias goes on a he wins a spa treatment or something, and he goes along because he wants to just see what it will be before he actually does it for real. And he ends up just doing the entire treatment, not realizing that he's just basically used his time and he's done it all. And he's just like, it's an excellent package. I'll take it. And Gilbert Gottfried is the guy that goes, you just did. And it's like very, very soft spoken, like just awesome to see him in that. And I think some people didn't realize it was him just because they didn't expect the voice. Without the voice, it's tough to recognize him.
It is, yeah.
He's a legend as well.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic. If you ever listen to when he does impressions, some of his impressions are like amazing. The funny thing is, like, when he's on Howard Stern and they ask him to do Dracula, like, they always invite him on like around Halloween, and he does prank phone calls as Dracula, and he is just so funny.
It's true. I'm definitely not going to repeat it on this podcast. But if you look up on YouTube, Gilbert Gottfried's "The Aristocrats" joke, my God, it's the filthiest thing you've ever heard. It's one of those jokes that isn't even funny, but comedians love it because they just try to outdo each other on how filthy and disgusting they make it. And his version is hilarious because even on its own, it's filthier than the others. It's just the best version of it. But then you also praise the fact that he's saying it in that voice is just absolute genius.
Well, I want to give one honorable mention to the episode "The Haunting of Andy Mcallister" because some of the scenes in that, and especially it's a Halloween episode. It's their Halloween episode for the season. Them fighting the ghost, the cowboys, was a cool idea. I really like that. And Andy with the rifle, the Mcallister family heirloom, the rifle. I just like that idea. Like, and his crazy uncle, who has this really crazy house. And I love the music that Kevin Kiner did for that episode. It was so like Dracula and so Halloween like. It was a great episode. I really like that episode. Shameless episode, harmless episode, but it was just really cool. And just some of the visuals in that Superboy walking into the saloon, and fighting, getting into a bar fight was awesome. Getting hit over the head with a bottle, like, it was just so cool. I love that episode.
I haven't seen that episode in years. I need to go back and rewatch it now.
I really like that episode. It was fun. It was a fun episode. And I love Andy, like when you see all the ghosts, and it looked like something out of Michael Jackson's Thriller, as they're all the ghosts are coming out of the saloon, after the Lana, Andy, his uncle, and Lana and Superboy, the four of them, as they're trying to get back into our realm. It was just really cool. And Superboy sticking his arm through the mirror, that was great. I love that episode. It was just so much fun. And like, I love the supernatural episodes that they did on this series. It was really well done, even though it looked really hokey, but still it was paying homage to the Adventures of Superman, series. So I really like that.
I definitely need to go back and rewatch that at some point.
That was
years and years since I've seen that episode.
And it's funny because the main actor that played, what was it? The main actor that had the noose around his neck, and was, I think all three of them or four of them had nooses around their neck. But I think the main guy that fought Superboy in the bar, they bring him back, and I think it was season 3 or season 4 in the episode Standoff. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that actor. It was really cool how they bring him back. So, but yeah, I really liked that episode, The Haunting of Andy Mcallister. It was cool to see Andy's family, his uncle. We got to see his father in Program for Death earlier in the season. So to see more of Andy's family and where he comes from, that was pretty cool. But yeah, it was a great episode. Let's go on to the next. You know what? We're going to group the last 4.
Yeah, we might as well do this in 4.
Okay.
This is difficult for me because I'm not a huge fan of any of these episodes.
Okay. Well,
maybe Johnny Casanova.
Okay. Well, episode 20.
Yeah, I think that would be my favorite, just because it's ridiculous and I just find it so funny.
Okay. Well, let's recap this for people. Episode 23 was Revenge from the Deep. Episode 24, The Secrets of Superboy, which saw the return of Nick Nack, and it was basically a clip show.
Yeah. That's why I'm not even going to think about including that, because I hate clip shows. I think they're so lazy.
Episode 25, Johnny Casanova and the Case of the Secret Serum. And then episode 26, A Woman Called Tiger Eye. That was the season finale.
I do quite like The Woman Called Tiger Eye, but Johnny Casanova's my favorite. I just think it's so funny. Like, it's sort of the reverse of the Nutty Professor. He's still charming, but he looks like a slob. It's just a really funny episode. And Gerard's very funny in it as well. Just his reactions to people falling over themselves for Johnny. It's just really, really fun.
Well, I liked Johnny Casanova because of the actor who played Johnny Casanova, Mark Holt, was in Teen Wolf. I remember him from Teen Wolf as Michael J. Fox's one of his friends.
I can't remember seeing him in anything else. I think this is the only thing I've seen him in.
He was in Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure as
I saw that as a kid, but I haven't seen it lately. Yeah. That's another one I'll have to go back and rewatch at some point.
Yeah, he was in that. He was in Seinfeld.
Never was a Seinfeld fan, to be honest.
He was in A League of Their Own. He was in MacGyver. Like he's done a number of things, but little bit parts. He was chubby in Teen Wolf. Teen Wolf was great, and then he was in Teen Wolf 2.
Was he the only actor that came back for the sequel?
He was the only actor that came back. Yeah. In Teen Wolf. He was Francis in Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure. Remember him fighting Pee Wee?
Oh, the guy that steals the bike.
You stole my bike, Francis. Francis.
Yeah, I remember him now. Yeah, he's the guy that stole the bike.
Yeah. But he was great. he was a great 80s actor, and he was in Little Giants. Remember Little Giants? Oh, come on. Little Giants.
Never saw that.
You never saw Little Giants? Oh my god.
No, what was it about?
It was about a kids' Pee Wee football team with
American football, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It probably it wasn't so big over here.
Yeah.
What we call football is soccer. So, and I don't even like that. I'm not a big sports fan, so there's a lot of sport movies that I haven't seen.
Well, Little Giants was with Rick Moranis. You know Rick Moranis.
Oh
right?
Yeah, I know Rick Moranis. I just haven't seen that one.
Like, he was the
Honey,
dad.
I Shrunk the Kids. I like the Flintstones. Like, just he's great. I just haven't seen that movie.
Well, I liked Johnny Casanova. That was a good episode. It was a fun episode. That was another one that Ilya Salkin wrote with Mark Jones.
So he wrote that one. That's cool.
They devised that.
Definitely better than the Dracula one that he wrote, in my opinion.
I love Lana's line of dialogue when she burst into the dorm with Andy and Clark, and Johnny comes walking in, and it's just so funny. Just the look on Clark and Andy's face is like, this guy? Really? It's just so funny.
But doesn't Andy start to like him as well? And like Clark's the only one that's immune.
The serum starts working on him, and it's just so funny. But like everybody's reaction to Johnny is just so funny. And then I love Clark just like sitting there going, no.
Sort of does that thing that he did a lot in season 2 where he's like rolling his eyes and doing a little smirk. Like, I love that part of how he played Clark.
Oh, yeah. My favorite part in that episode was the end when Johnny reverts back to his original form, that tennis player. I forgot his name, but it's just so funny. Superboy uses his X-ray vision to look down the little cross space that he supposedly, got away, in, and finds the serum and throws it back to Johnny. Well, that was his name. Sorry, Johnny, and just threw Casanova in there. So Johnny catches the serum and goes and says his line of dialogue, and Superboy goes, well, if you see him, and he winks at the camera. Again, very cartoon 60s like way of capping the episode off. They did it in season 1 with John in the Jewel Tetra Call to close that episode off, and it was a nice little nod at the end of this episode to have Gerard do the same thing.
It's a nice nod to the George Reeves stuff as well, because that would often end with George Reeves looking into camera, smiling, and say, well, if only Superman had been here or something like that, or good for Superman. Like,
well, it's
just a fun little device.
Right. It's just breaking the third wall, letting everybody, like letting the audience into the story. I love that. That was such a great way to cap that episode off. And it was just a fun episode, that Johnny Casanova. But let's talk about the season finale, A Woman Called Tiger Eye. I like this episode, and it's funny because the main villain, Tiger Eye, was played by Sky Aubrey, who was Ilya's wife.
She was in 2 episodes, wasn't she? She was in Mutant in season 1.
She was in Mutants and was the leader of the Mutants. Yeah. So,
and I really like Mutant. Out of the two that she's in, I prefer Mutant. I've got to be honest. It's not the best episode, but I think it's got some really cool ideas. I love the idea that the only one that looks normal isn't the mutant. She's is the mutant. She's the throwback, and the others are just regular humans from the future. I love that idea. It's just a nice twist.
Well, I like Tiger Eye. I feel like she had more fun playing Tiger Eye than she did in Mutant.
Like, she turns people into animals and stuff.
Right? She turned Lana into a snake. Yeah. That was pretty funny. Yeah.
Doesn't Superboy make her a diamond at the end as well? Like,
yeah, a very Superman 3 callback.
It's always nice when he does that. Just
crushing the coal in his hand and giving it to Tiger Eye. That was pretty cool. But yeah, it was a good episode. And Superboy fighting her minions, her muscle bound, minions was pretty funny. But I always wondered where that painting or where that portrait of Superboy that she had up on the wall is. That was a cool photo, the behind the scenes photo that they just blew up. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, but, I wonder if that will turn up one day on eBay. If it does, you've got to get it. add it to your home museum.
The massive Superboy museum. Yeah, but it's just cool.
You literally could open a museum if you wanted. I think you've got enough stuff now. we do it for those limited run, just like open for one weekend only.
It's funny because here in Chicago, before the pandemic hit, they were doing a Friends like quasi limited museum. They opened a museum here in downtown Chicago for the TV show Friends, and it was just only like 2 or 3 weeks that they were doing it, and they had all these little props and stuff from Friends. So yeah, that's an idea. Be cool.
I'll just be sad that I won't be able to come and.
That's funny.
You'll have to video it though. That would be a brilliant video for the channel.
Funny to do a limited run of just Superboy stuff or Superman stuff, because I know so many people with Superman props, and it would just be so much fun to have fans and of this world get to see like stuff from the shows or from the movies. Instead of having to trek all the way down to Metropolis, you could come to Chicago or go out to Los Angeles or go somewhere fun. Just no offense to Metropolis, but like, yeah, like
it's a bit of a trek, and there's not much else to do when you're there.
Yeah, it's a trek. It's a go. I was amazed when I went there a couple years ago, in November. It was for the Noel Neal tribute, and I went with Jim Bowers, and to go there when there's nothing going on, it's literally Smallville. It's a ghost town. So, like, they live for those 4 days of the year in June. Like that.
It's one of those things I'd love to go. I want to get my picture taken in front of the statue. I want to go to the Superman Museum. But it's a lot of money and a long way to fly just to go to one location, because then it's like, well, what do I do for the rest of the time that I'm there? So it's somewhere I'll probably only get to go if I'm visiting somewhere else in the country. Like if I've got like a train ticket or something, so I go there for one day and then travel on to my actual holiday.
Yeah. So, well, it's Superman Mecca. Anybody who's a Superman fan, you have to go. You have to go.
It's one of those things that I've got to do at some point. It's just I have to make it part of a larger trip.
You got to put it on your bucket list. Things to do before I, move on. Like, you got to go and see it, because they have so much amazing stuff down there. It's funny because I'm friends with the curators of the Superman Museum, and they're great. They like Morgan Hembrick sends me messages all the time of stuff from Superboy. Like, Sam, what is this? We recently found a season 1 poster that was up in Carrie Bates and Mark Jones' office, signed by all the guest stars from season 1.
Oh, that's awesome.
So like I'm like, Morgan, you have something really amazing here. She's like, what? I go, look at the poster. It's signed by Leaf Phoenix, which is Joaquin Phoenix as a kid, and he signed it with his character's name. He inscribed it with his character's name. She's like, oh my God. So yeah, there are things in that museum that they don't even know they have, and we're always finding stuff, all the time.
It's pretty damn awesome, I gotta say.
But I hope to have Morgan and Adam and Jim Hembrick on the Superboy Legacy podcast soon. So that'd be
good. That'd be fun to talk to.
But
I think the only Superboy guest star that we'll probably never get to have as well on the podcast would be Joaquin Phoenix. Because how difficult would that be to pull off? Like, that's just never going to happen.
He's too busy doing the next Joker. He's doing another Joker. So that's amazing. And it's just amazing because he started out on Superboy, and now look at where he's at in his career. He's in a DC property. It's nuts.
From DC to DC.
Full circle. So with that, you want to close this episode out?
I'm good. Let's just finish this.
All right.
This has gone on a hell of a lot longer than we expected. We thought this was going to be quite a short episode.
Well, thank you guys for sticking with us. If you've made it to the end of the podcast, thank you guys. I know it's been a while. We're going to do more episodes more frequently because of the whole COVID stuff and personal schedules and stuff like that. We're going to get back to doing more podcasts and do more interviews and new original, more original content in the coming weeks and coming months. So just stick with us. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes, Twitter, and on the Facebook groups. Make sure you go to superboylegacy.com so you don't miss anything Superboy related. And with that, I'm Sam Rizzo from Superboy The Legacy.
I'm Tom Gallagher, and let us know in the comments as well if you think we've got some of the episode picks wrong. Let us know what your favourite episodes from each chunk are. That'd be great to hear. I'd love to get in the comments and discuss some of that with you guys.
Yeah, let us know your feedback on the podcast, on the website, anything that you see with the Superboy Legacy brand, and let us know. Yeah, tell us some of your ideas for some podcast episodes. What do you want to hear? What do you want to see on the website or on the social media pages? So thank you guys.
That'd be great to do episodes based on viewer listener requests. That'd be fantastic. I'd love to do that.
So thank you guys for listening, and until the next podcast, talk to you soon.